Welcome to Better, the podcast about doing better, being better, and leaving the world a better place than we found it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Better, Do Better, Be Better, Make the World a Better Place. How's it going? What's up? I hope you're having a great day. Few housekeeping items to take in consideration before we get going with our guest. First, betterpodcast.live. Remember back in the day when I had to say our TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or everything, and then I had to go through all the different networks we're on. Everything's at betterpodcast.live. So you go to that link, you can access everything, our social, all our feeds, YouTube, everything. It's all there. So it's literally the only link you need. And yes, it ends with .live. You don't need to put .com after the .live. Some people still do that. So betterpodcast.live. All right. And in case you haven't heard, I have a book. It's coming out March 1st. It's available for pre-order in ebook copy on Amazon right now. But March 1st, the last first date comes out in story. It's a story inspired by how I met my girlfriend, Shauna. And inside this book, if you are a fan of this podcast, you will find quite a bit of things we've talked about. It's not just a contemporary romance novel. It's a kind of like an examination of traditional dating clashing with modern dating. And there's a lot of lessons in it. It's a great read. According to my 50 beta readers, my editor, my girlfriend. So what more endorsement do you need, right? So go grab that off of Amazon. And if you're in Winnipeg, February 16th, that is my book release event. DM me if you want to come. It's going to be a great night with comedians and special guests and literary games and the most amazing dinner put on by Hermano's Restaurant and Wine Bar. It's going to be a superb night. Okay, so now they got all that stuff out of the way. I want to introduce you to my guest. Now, my guest is someone who personifies better because she was told that the world was basically not made for her, and then she defied all the odds. So I want to introduce you to Michelle Steiner. Michelle, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
I am excellent. I am very well. So you told me a little bit about your story, and I was like, well, that's exactly what this podcast is for. People that either felt like they couldn't do something and they ended up doing it, and that's amazing, or people that were told they couldn't do something and they ended up defying the odds that way. So those are really the two guests I go for, and you definitely fit into the latter. So why don't you introduce yourself, kind of give us the tweet version or the excretion version of your story quickly about just anything you want people to know about you.
Sure. Well, my name is Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband, Ron, and our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. I am a writer, a speaker, a photographer, and I'm also a paraeducator in a school. I work with students who have disabilities and some who don't. And I have a learning disability myself. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability.
It's a what disability? Sorry?
It's a math disability.
A math disability.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And as a result of this disability, you were basically told you couldn't do much of what you wanted to do in life. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. I knew that I wanted to go to college, and I had a learning support teacher who told me, well, with your math difficulties, I don't think that you can handle college. I knew that there was going to be some difficulty, especially with math, because we've known since I was a very young child that I had one. And that was always the struggle. But I knew I wanted to go to college, but she didn't think I could. And she suggested a trade school while I was in school. And it just, nothing there interested me. Trade schools are great, but I just didn't want to do some of the programs. And I decided that I was going to go to college. And I got connected with the Office for Vocational Rehabilitation. And one of the things before I was able to be able to receive services, they had to test and see if I had a disability all over again. Never been a great test taker. And my scores were really low. And the psychiatrist who evaluated me said, based on these scores, we don't think you're going to go beyond community college. I get to community college and there's more stigma. I had people that were telling me that using the disability accommodations were cheating, thinking I graduated, and I ran into more classmates like this. And I can also remember my advisor telling me, well, you're going to have limited job choices because of your disability. And I even had a professor who told me, oh, we don't use calculators in this class, we use our brains. So the idea of using disability accommodations and having a disability was really considered something that carried a lot of weight of shame, a stigma attached to that. And for a lot of years, I was really negative with having a disability. And that was really, really difficult for me.
So how does this disability manifest? Like, what is the challenge that comes with it? I know it's a math disability, but like I don't know what that exactly how to frame that in my head.
Sure, no, that is perfectly fine. I have difficulty with how numbers work. I don't see numbers backwards, but I have a hard time just knowing, understanding how they'll work. Like with memory, it's really difficult for me to be able to memorize like my times tables, multiplication, division, subtraction. I also really I can't even read the face of a clock, despite multiple interventions whenever I was in school. And it goes beyond a classroom. I confuse my right from my left, and that affects my hand coordination. And I can't tell you east, south, west, north. I cannot tell you all those different kinds of directional concepts. And it can be hard for me to budget. It's really difficult to know how much of a tip I'm going to leave. Everybody knows that I cannot help at school. I'll tell the kids I cannot help you with math. And even when I do get in situations where they do put me in a classroom where there's math, I'm very vocal about I cannot do that. I can help keep kids on task, but I am not able to do math to save my life. And it also, I also confused, just the left from the right. That's another factor. And there's just a lot of things that it really has impacted my life. But the beauty is, I've been able to find ways around that all my life. And that's the key thing when you have a disability is A, knowing how to advocate for yourself, and B, finding different ways to be able to handle the situation.
Ways to do better, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So I'm consider I've never had a disability before. I've had currently, as a result of an illness I got in January, I have reactive arthritis, which is
Mhm.
a temporary arthritis, but it's limited me physically. I'm getting better every day, but it's something that will go away. And I know, I had to walk very slow. I couldn't do stairs. I had a lot of,
Mhm.
I had a limp. Every step was painful. I saw the way people were different towards me.
Mhm.
And it's a very small example. And you said you've faced some biases and some discrimination as a result
Right.
of your disability. Where do you think that comes from for people? Like, why? I don't know. I can't see. When for me, if I see somebody that, or somebody tells me I have a disability, that's my cue to be kinder
Mhm.
to that person in consideration for. But then there are those people that will where do you think that comes from as somebody that has experienced that discrimination in your life?
Well, a lot of times people will, they have that discrimination because we think, well, disabilities are ones that we can see. We're so used to people that
Mhm.
might have a physical disability, and we can say, okay, that person is in a wheelchair. Obviously, they can't do stairs, or if they can, I mean, they might need a stair lift, or if the person cannot do stairs when they're in a wheelchair. We understand that. And we're
Mhm.
willing to accommodate. We're willing to say, all right, you need an elevator, you need a stair lift, things like that. But when somebody has a disability they can't see, it's really hard for them to be understanding. I get a lot of people that will tell me, "Oh, you don't look like you have a disability," and sometimes people think that's a compliment, and that also adds to that stigma where having a disability isn't something to be ashamed of. It's just a part of my life, and a part of who I am. And these are just some things that I need to be able to, to do. And so I think part of it comes with that. And also a lot of times people, because they can't see it, they think that also I can do anything. I get that a lot too. I'll have people say, well, why can't you drive because of your disability? And I try to explain that it's not safe with the visual perception, like another part, which I think is also related to the math learning disability as well. And people just think that, oh, you should be able to do it. And if you really wanted to, you could. And sometimes that's explaining it to them. And then I also run into people that think that, oh, they hear the word disability and they think, well, what can you do? You can't obviously do this, or you're not able to go to college, or can you do certain activities? And I'm like, well, there's certain things I can do, and there's certain things I can't, and I'll let you know what I can do. So I think that's part of it too. And I also think a stigma that really comes along with some of these ideas is if somebody knows somebody that has a disability. I have had people that have said, oh, I know someone that has a learning disability and they drive, or I
No.
know somebody that has a learning disability and they were able to do this job or to be able to understand math. And that person may be able to do that, but there might be some other difficulties that they have because everybody has a different kind and everyone's going to experience it a lot differently as well. So I think sometimes it's just because people can't see it, they don't understand. I think sometimes just what they know about it. A lot of people are also very unfamiliar with what they are. And I just sometimes just think people don't always know how to handle it.
It's interesting that people would just think that every disability is cut from the same cloth, and that well, if you just try hard enough, because I mean, by that definition, I mean, I can't learn another language to save my life. I have tried every app imaginable. I've tried classes. I was able to speak Ukrainian pretty fluently until grade 4. And then I just lost it because nobody spoke it around me. I can't do it at all now. I've tried Spanish, French, Ukrainian, German, Russian. I've tried everything. I can't learn another language. I don't know what it is. My brain just doesn't want to go there. I don't know if it's just so full with everything else that there's no room. But we all have things we can't do. I mean, that's such a weird thing to hold against somebody, that, oh, you can't do this. Well, can you walk on a tightrope? Can you, like, it's strange. And one thing I've noticed while doing this show is any difference of any kind, whether it be somebody that was abused as a child and has trauma, whether it be an athlete I had on the show that has a cleft lip, disability, any difference whatsoever, you're always going to find a bunch of people that define that person only by that difference.
Right.
When there's way more to you than a math disability.
Exactly.
And there's it's strange to me that it's taken the world so long to come around to what I have called at times mental tolerance, where it's a mental disability or a mental health crisis, or just a guy. This is a big theme on the show as well. Just men being able to speak about what they're feeling.
Right.
They haven't all cooped up inside. So have you noticed, sorry, I know this is impolite to ask a woman, but you can just give me an estimate of your age.
I'm in my 40s. So it was definitely a time period that I was really lucky to get diagnosed because there was just legislation passed a few years prior to that.
Okay. So have you noticed society getting more tolerant towards disability, or are you noticing it's getting worse, or is it pretty much the same? Like, just your personal experience. I'm not asking you to speak for the whole population or anything.
Sure. What I have noticed is there is a lot more advocacy work and a lot more grassroots that's coming, like with Disability Pride, that'll come up. I know we've had a couple in Pittsburgh and they have them around Pennsylvania. So a lot of that's coming up and people wanting to hear that voice. I mean, that is something I really wanted to keep inside from a long time, because there was that shame that went with it, because people really didn't talk about disability. It was more, something shameful that people just didn't want to really speak about. So I can see that coming about. And I do think that we are noticing with a lot of people now that maybe they do have disabilities. I often hear that, oh, there's so many, why are there so many people diagnosed with autism or ADD? And it's not that it's really a new diagnosis. It's just, we didn't know, maybe even during that time period, that people might have those things. And the same goes with learning disabilities. People really didn't understand that. And so I think that is changing a lot. I do think, though, that it is really difficult, especially with kids, to be kind and to be understanding of people who have them, or for the ones who have them themselves. It's like hearing a recording of myself with a lot of them at that age. I hate having my disability, but I think that there's a lot more services too than there was a long time ago as well. So that's changing. So it's becoming a culture that is slowly being pushed into the mainstream. And I also think we now talk about disability as you age. Sometimes those things happen, and it's a club that anybody can join at any period in their life, and some can be temporary and some can be permanent. So I do see more of that visibility that's coming out, and people that are willing to talk about it.
Well, that's good, because I mean, it's just such a, there's so many things that can divide us. It's a really, really dumb one to judge someone based on what you feel they can't do the way you want it to be done, or where in your case, where there are certain limitations you have, and you've taken those limitations and you've flipped them on their heads, so to speak, as opposed to allowing them, which a lot of people, I'm sure, do allow them to define you, right? Okay.
Right.
I don't know my left from right, so I'm never going to try to go left, and I'm never going to try to go right. It sounds silly, but I'm sure that, there are people, because you must have had a great support system around you growing up, I'm guessing.
I really did. I was really blessed. My parents were really supportive. My mom went to every IEP meeting. My parents, they didn't expect perfect grades, but they did expect that I tried. And we had a lot of long, tearful homework sessions where I was upset and crying, and they were pretty upset about that. But they made me go to school, even when I wasn't going to do well on a test, even when I was being bullied and having problems with my peers. I was expected to go to school. And they explained to me that I had a learning disability from the time I was very young, and my brain learned differently. And that was really great, because the advice that I was getting in school, or the things that my peers were telling me, was I was stupid and I wasn't smart. And it just was really hearing that from my parents. It didn't sink in at first, but eventually it did. Right. And they were always very supportive over having a disability. We were very honest. They knew I wasn't going to be a math genius whenever I was 5 or 6, along with the school. But they really encouraged me to go after my dreams. But they were also realistic that there were certain things that were definitely going to impact me. And just finding ways around that was something that they really encouraged.
Well, that's great, because I know some people don't have that support system, right?
Yeah.
That definitely helped probably frame your perspective on what was happening in terms of that limitation that you have. So I have a couple questions about if you can't tell left from right, let's talk about how you do better. So what is the way that you've gotten around not being able to tell left from right?
Well, like sometimes I pull up both of my hands to know which one. Or else I'll just put them out like this, and then I can tell. I also definitely, like with my shoes, sometimes I have to go by if it feels right, because I can't tell if it's on the right foot or the left foot.
Oh, interesting.
That's definitely something that I can do. I have to definitely, I can't drive because of that, but that is all right to do that. And I do the best that I can, and I also give myself grace. So if I'm in a group exercise class and they say go to your right or go to your left, and I go in the wrong direction, I give myself that grace, and I realize that everybody makes mistakes with stuff like that. Another issue I have is the limited hand dexterity, and that we think it's all just a global learning disability.
Right.
My handwriting's affected by that, and when I learned how to type, that was a real game changer for me because people can be able to understand what I'm saying. And I have equipment that I can use in the kitchen. I have an electric can opener and a key helper to help me with keys. But I think those things help. And I also think that the biggest part of it all is just advocating and really speaking up and sharing my story, because that I get that chance to meet other people that are like me and do have a lot of the same struggles. And I think that helps too with just in my headspace, just with being better.
Yeah, that was my next question. How many people have this?
It's estimated that 1 in 5 people have dyscalculia and have learning disabilities in general.
One in
Yep.
five.
And it's definitely a true statistic. I can remember I was at a writers group and we had one of the prompts. I can't remember exactly what the prompt was, but I wrote about having a learning disability. And after I read that, and we had our people that made comments afterwards, there were people that said, I have a learning disability. And I counted. It was a really simple thing to count to 5.
Yeah.
And it was 5 people in the room besides me that had one.
Wow.
Some form of one. I mean, not
Yeah.
all of it was a math disability, but I mean, there was people that had that. And a lot of people will say, oh, with students that you work with, are they like you? And we don't see as many, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It means a lot of people aren't aware of it. So
Mhm.
sometimes we just will tell them, oh, you can do it, or we kind of help them along, or just kind of pass them through, or just give them like really basic classes. But these kids aren't getting a lot of the services that they need, and nobody's telling them, okay, you have this specific learning disability. It doesn't mean you can't be successful in life, but these are some strategies and some things to consider. And I think that must be so hard if you're a kid and everybody's saying, oh, growth mindset, you can do anything you put your mind to. And for those kids, I mean, they might have a better understanding. It certainly doesn't harm them to have knowledge and to try to teach them and to put forth effort. But I think a lot of times, especially somebody that has a math learning disability, they do need to know that this is going to be something that's going to be a challenge, and it's not the fault of the person. But there's so many things that you can do with despite having one and being successful.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of I just did an episode about
Mm-hmm.
hustle culture. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the same thing. Hustle culture in a nutshell has totally thrown off a lot of people's work-life balance, and
Mm-hmm.
it's made it so that you some people feel lazy if they don't work 24 hours a day.
Yep.
And it's detrimental to people's health. And
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely something that's caused a lot of friction in terms of people willing to do it, people not willing to do it, and then the people that aren't willing to do it are called lazy, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a stigma put to them, right? Oh, they're not willing
Right.
to do whatever they can do for their goals. And I just think that with a lot of these things, whether it be a learning disability or hustle culture or any of this, um, it's weird that we can't recognize each other as individuals,
Right. Yeah.
and just, because like, when I do a pros and cons list for anything in my life, um, there's always some cons, and that's the same thing with people. There's always going to be things that people are better or worse at. And I don't really understand why that would define people for others, especially people in a position to tell children that they can or can't do something.
Mm-hmm.
Like in your example. So you were basically told to stop trying to live the life you wanted to live, essentially. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. A lot. Yeah, I was pretty much told that I couldn't go to college and that she wanted to have me go to a trade school, which was what every other one of the people that was in my class that had a learning disability did. Whether they liked it or they didn't like it, they went there. And I can just remember a lot of them, they were not even interested in it.
Right.
Whenever the school came to talk to us about that, I knew that it wasn't for me. And a peer asked me, "So you're going to go on the tour of that school?" And I said, "Oh no, it's just not really my thing. I don't think I'm going to do it." And she said, "Oh, I would go on it even if it meant that I could miss, because if I wasn't interested, so I could miss school." And that person didn't. I don't think any of the people that I went to school with, I haven't really kept in touch, but if I have looked some of them up, and a lot of them, they keep a job on a consistent basis. None of them went to college, and none of them are doing what they went to the technical school for. And I just have to wonder what that teacher might have told them. Maybe they had dreams of wanting to go to college, and she might have told them, "Well, you probably can't do that because of your reading," or you maybe there wasn't a lot with math, but maybe some of them they couldn't do that with their math or whatever the disability was, because so many of them they think, well, I'm not smart enough for college, or that's for smart people, and I'm not smart. And I felt that way before too. But I just think with a lot of them, they get that narrative that I can't do it and it's too hard. And then people want to give up and they want to do something that's just not really their passion in life.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't end up living up to what their dreams are or how to work around things. I think that's another big thing too. Uh, for example, I knew that I wanted to work with kids in a school, but I knew being a certified teacher was not going to be a good option for me because I'm not a great test taker.
Mm.
And I just knew that trying to take a lot of those tests to get into the College of Education and getting certified was pretty much setting me up for failure. So I really looked into some programs that were really similar to working with kids or working with others that had disabilities and didn't require that. And that was a real that was a real success for me.
Well, that's great. I have to wonder, first of
Mhm.
all, I have to wonder what kind of training that person received, that their automatic default position is, oh, you're not like this, so you must do that, and for a lot of people, when you tell them they can't, they won't.
Right.
And but you're built differently. So what do you attribute that to? Well, we'll end off this part one of this on this question. Was it your support system? Was it something else? What do you attribute your ability to look past that, where it seems most of your classmates in a similar situation couldn't? And not only do that, but to persevere and to actually end up you didn't end up exactly where you wanted to, but you did a little pivot so that you
Mhm.
could be as close to it as possible, and it still made you very happy. So what do you attribute your ability to see past that person who was telling you you can't, so you shouldn't?
I think a lot of it was my support. My mom and dad really encouraged a lot of that, especially when I was young to do that. And I knew that I liked, had a lot, they supported a lot of my interests, like with books and reading and writing. And so I think that was another thing too. And they knew that. And we had a lot of open and honest conversations about that. And I also had some great friends too that were definitely, supportive that I had that were outside of school. So I think that helped out a lot as well. And I think it was my motivation. I was always somebody that if I was going to put forth the effort into it, I wanted to finish that to completion. So I was on a very clear path and I was really blessed that I had a really clear vision of what I wanted to do and to stay on that path. If they would have wanted me to be a chef or a beautician, those are great career choices. But I don't think I would have gotten the satisfaction or the motivation to do that. And I didn't want to waste my time on something that was not going to serve me in the future.
Of course, yeah, that makes absolute sense. I wonder when, like, did you talk it over with your parents and your friends, saying, this person told me I can't do
Yeah.
A, they want me to go road Z, you know?
Yeah, I did talk it over with them. And then for a long time, I felt really bad about myself. I have not always been a very positive person. I can just remember thinking, I'm never going to do this. Oh, I failed at this again. And I was not happy. And it was really hard. And everybody just said, yeah, you can do it. You're going to be fine. They were my cheerleaders a lot of times. And especially with having friends when I was in college, I think that was the thing that really helped a lot, because sometimes I could go and I could have a bad class, or I could gotten a bad grade on a test, and my friends couldn't fix it, but we could go out on a Saturday and be able to do fun things and just be able to hang out. And that was something. They could be my friend. They couldn't fix my problem or my situation, but just having that support that you're loved, even if this doesn't work out. And that was also with my parents too. You're loved, even if this dream doesn't work out. Try something else. And there's a lot of things that I failed at. There's a lot of setbacks that I've had. And rather than my parents telling me, oh, well, you're just going to live with us for the rest of your life, or you can't work or do that class, they would just say, okay, find another job. All right, find another way to be able to go around doing it, rather than just completely giving up.
Right. Okay. Well, when we come back with part 2, I want to talk about those setbacks and dive a little bit more into, I'm interested about the frustrations as a kid that were around this and how you got over those. So we will come back. This is part 1 with Michelle Steiner, and we're going to come back with part 2, and we're going to discuss keep this discussion going, because I'm really interested in this discussion for a couple of really great reasons that we'll get into in part 2. So if you want to see part 2 or listen to part 2, make sure you subscribe. betterpodcast.live. That's our website. And part 2 should be very interesting, just as interesting as part 1. So come back and enjoy. Later.
Thanks for checking out Better. If you got to the end, it must mean you liked the episode, right? So how about 5 stars, maybe a sub, maybe a share? Great universal common points. And good luck on your better journey.